It's Wednesday. That means it's time for the All Utah Hockey Podcast. I'm Petey. This is Craig Morgan. Make sure you give us a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Petey. There's Craig. Craig, how are we doing today on this Wednesday?
Oh, hanging in there, Petey.
Obviously
a lot going on. There's a lot going on. We don't want to touch that. We don't want to touch that, do we?
We will not. We will not. We're going to talk Utah hockey for the next hour. But to help us do that, we're going to bring in a very special guest, former NHL player, nearly 900 games played in this league, and one of the voices of the Utah Hockey Club's broadcast team, the hockey analyst for the Utah Hockey Club, Dominic Moore, joins us today. There should be an applause right there, Craig. We got to work on it.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, can we get canned laughing or something in there? Maybe
yeah, we'll work on it for next show, Dom, because we'll have to have you back. This is the first of many, I hope. Craig, I know you've got a lot of in-depth personal stuff that you want to get to with Dominic Moore today, so we'll let you start it off.
Yeah, this is not family history. I can promise you that, Dom. We're not going to delve that deeply. But first off, you're in St. Louis right now, right?
Correct.
So you made it out of Winnipeg. Congratulations on that. Before we get into the club, I want to talk a lot about the club. But before we do that, I want to ask how you got into media in the first place, how you decided that it was okay to cross over to the dark side.
Well, I retired in 2019. Took a year off. We had our first daughter the month before SHIT hit the fan with the pandemic, as everyone recalls those times quite fondly. Took some time off, and then, I had never really thought that I would do broadcasting, to be completely open about it. I had been told during my career, hey, you'd be good at this, but I never really thought I'd want to do it. The opportunity came up to join NBC, out of the pandemic. And, quite honestly, I had some conversations with friends that had been doing it, not only in hockey, but in other sports. And that's when it really started to grow on me, because, there's no better way to know what something's like than by talking to people who are doing it. So, those conversations were instrumental in changing my view and giving it a shot. And so started doing studio and calling games with NBC. Was really lucky to be part of an amazing group there. Called my first game ever with Kenny Albert. I mean, how's that for starting out in the business? Kenny and I had a great relationship from my time in New York and his time covering the Rangers, of course. So it was just a thrill to be in the booth, but it was literally a booth during the pandemic, because we were in Stamford, Connecticut, not in an arena, and calling it in what is essentially like a porta potty with a couple monitors in it. And so I'm in one porta potty and Kenny's in the other. We can see each other through this glass, but it was quite the way to start out in this business. And I remember Kenny telling me, listen, if you can do a good job here calling it off of a 12-inch monitor, just wait till you get into the arena. And it was all I knew at that point. And actually, I think it ended up being a real feather in my cap, having to learn, essentially kind of like running with a weight vest on. And then once you take it off, everything seems a lot easier. So it ended up being, really great for my development, I think, to start that way.
Did you get insight from former players on what it was like to cross over? Did that, and if so, did that help?
Yeah, but for the most part, it wasn't hockey players. It was friends I've made in other sports. For example, tennis. There's some friends that have gone on to be in the broadcast world from that, and they just spoke about their experience and what it was like to do the job. Because it's one thing to think about it, but it's another thing to know what the day in and day out, the good, the bad, the ugly that goes into a job. It's just like, being a professional athlete, everyone always thinks about the good and all the great, and there is all the great aspects to it, but you want to know what the whole picture might look like when you actually get into that. And again, it wasn't something I thought I would do, but I had some great conversations that led me down that road, and I'm glad I did because I've loved every minute of it.
Peter, you can jump in when you want here, but I'm curious, now that you've been in it a little while, what do you like about it? Do you like it, in fact, in spite of the fact that you have to work with Matt McConnell?
So I love the job, and the reason I love the job is because it allows me to do two things. One, I get to teach the game, and so I've always loved the opportunity to teach the game. I've lived a lot. I've been playing this game since I was 3 years old. Gone up the ranks. I've experienced a lot. Played for 10 different teams. All kinds of Hall of Fame teammates and opponents, and Hall of Fame coaches and managers along the way. It just all that experience, being able to shed light on the game as an analyst, teach the game is a privilege. And the second part is the ability to share the love for the game. And so that's, I think, the double whammy that makes it the greatest opportunity, around, is to be able to teach and share the love for the game for viewers on a nightly basis, that are turning on their TV. And my goal is to help give them something they've never heard before, whether it's a new fan that is tuning in, just getting to learn the game, or a fan that's been watching their whole life. Like to share something that just ups their love for the game and builds their relationship with the sport of hockey.
Dom, you've played in some pretty big markets. I mean, we're talking the New York Rangers, Montreal, Toronto, fans that really know the game, and you just talked a lot about teaching. So it's perfect timing for one of our chats from one of the listeners right now, from Superfin23, who says, Dom, how is it teaching a new market about hockey? And so my follow-up question to that is, do you approach it differently, knowing a lot of the fans are new fans to this sport?
Yeah, I think it's different for sure. So I started out doing it on the national broadcast with NBC, and then of course at ESPN. There is an element of the fact that you're conscious that you could be speaking to more casual fans doing it nationally. But there's not the same level of, like, literally new fans who are new to the rules, who are new to some of the fundamentals of the game. So that's something that I'm very conscious of. We're very conscious of as a group, our broadcast team in Utah, in trying to make sure that everyone feels welcomed in, and everyone is kind of getting brought into this universe of hockey and understanding the lingo. And it's not something that we want to just hammer away and just flood people, because I think that can be overwhelming. My take is, like, listen, it's simple. There's two nets. You got to put the puck in the net. We'll teach you the rest as we go, but we just want to kind of sprinkle it in little by little throughout the season, and do it in a way that's accessible, and also kind of threads the needle between fans that are familiar and have been watching hockey for a long time. So it's a fine balance that I think we've so far. I think we've done a successful job at hitting that point right on the head.
I've asked a number of players this question. I'm curious what you would say. When you step into that booth, you have an obligation to your audience, right? To tell the truth, and even to analyze, sometimes to criticize. How do you straddle that line as a former player? You you probably know what it's like to take it on the chin sometimes from media. So how do you straddle that line while trying to be honest with the audience?
It's a great question. So the way I think about it is the way so it takes me back to what I think the best coaches were like when I was a player. And the best coaches were not the ones that said, hey, you should have done this on that play. That to me it's not constructive. But a player the coaches that come and say, hey, what did you see on that play? That to me is a better way of building in criticism, because number one, there's more value there, right? There's more value in sharing with the viewer what the player might have seen on that play, that what went into the decision that was made. There may have been a mistake, but it's more interesting for the viewer to know what went into the decision that, or the execution that made that mistake happen, versus just saying that's a mistake. So I try to look at it in those terms. And you know what? This Utah Hockey Club is a young group, right? They're a lot of players that are age 25 and younger, that are maturing daily, that are getting better daily. When I think back to what I was like as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, I mean, I was still in college. If I had $1 for all the mistakes I made then, it's just this team is a work in progress. So trying to share kind of that development story and the learning that goes into that, I think is part of our job here as a broadcast group.
Well, let's talk about this team. Let's transition into what's going on with this Utah Hockey Club. Off to a really hot start. They got points in 5 of their first 6 games, and now they've got 1 win in their last 7. What do you attribute the hot start to, and have things changed?
I don't think things have changed. I think they've been, pretty consistent by and large the way they've played. I think there's definitely ups and downs to the season, like there are for all teams. Again, I think, Bill Armstrong has talked about the fact that, listen, some nights this team will look like gangbusters, where all that skill and speed comes out and you say, wow, this team is ready for the playoffs. And then, a night later, you'll see those mistakes come out. I think that's par for the course for a maturing group. So not surprising to see that. I think there's still a lot of season left, and we're seeing the strides the team is making on a daily basis. It's all about taking things from each game and having those takeaways and getting better the next game. But they're right in the thick of things, and I think they're feeding off of the energy of the new community, the new franchise, the ownership. There's an energy that runs through this group that is palpable. The players feel it, the coaches feel it, the managers feel it, and I can tell you the broadcasters feel it. It's an exciting thing to be a part of, and I think that energy will be there all throughout the year.
I want to talk a little bit, and obviously they made an addition on the blue line, and we don't even know how one of these has impacted the team yet because he never got a chance to play. But what's your sense of the impact of the John Marino and Sean Durzi injuries on this blue line and on the overall team?
That's a massive impact. So I had the opportunity to skate with John Marino when he was still in college, and you could see then how special he was. It's a rare combination of, poise, and he's also mean. So he's a big guy that plays physically, but he also makes those poised plays. He's just a great defender. Those are things you can't really coach. When he was added to this group, it was a major add. The fact that he's been unavailable has been a big hit to this group on the back end. And then of course Sean Durzi, he's a player that plays all minutes, power play, penalty kill. He's getting better every day. He's still young. A great energy, a charismatic guy in the locker room. Definitely part of the emerging leadership group in the locker room. So he's sorely missed as well. So not to be underestimated. And it's not like they had a ton of backup options. So I think it was really a necessity to try to shore things up, which wasn't, I think, very easy to do at this early stage in the season. But I think, the hockey ops staff did a fantastic job of identifying a player that could fill that hole, and he's done a great job since he's been in. Olli Määttä showing what's made him a valuable player in this league for a long time.
Yeah, let's talk about Olli's contributions, and I know that's early as well, right? He's got to learn the systems, he's got to learn personnel. There's a lot of adjustment that I think people overlook. I can't just step right into the lineup and be at 100%. But what do you think he can bring to this club? He's not going to bring the same skill set as the guys you just talked about. But what can he do for this lineup moving forward?
Well, given the youth that's on the back end, you've got players like Maveric Lamoureux who've played 6 NHL games. You've got Vladislav Kolyachonok, who's still a rookie. You've got some veterans in there, but there's a lot of youth, and so bringing in Olli Määttä brings just kind of settle things down, a little bit of poise, and anyone that's familiar with Olli knows that he's not flashy, but he does these little subtle plays in the game where all of a sudden he'll get a puck and he'll on a breakout, and instead of just throwing it up the wall into traffic and having it come back and hemmed in your own zone, he'll just hold on for a split second, make a subtle poised play to his partner, and they're out of the zone. So those are things that won't necessarily show up on the stat sheet, but are crucially important for a team. And so he's done that. And I think he'll continue to do that because he's been a consistent performer for his whole career.
Yeah, it's funny. You talked about some of the youth at the back end, and one of this with Durzi out of the lineup specifically, they struggle to find offense on the back end. And you've seen Kesselring. I think he's taken a huge step forward in his ability to get off the blue line and add to the offensive side. Are you seeing a little glimpse of that with the youngster Maveric Lamoureux right now, that his ability maybe to add some offense to this team down the road?
Yeah, I know that he has that offense in him. I think that he wisely is trying to keep things simple in the early going here. And we've seen so many rookies make the mistake of trying to do too much too soon. And you know what? You've got players like Mikhail Sergachev that are in the lineup that are supposed to run the top power play unit. Like you mentioned Michael Kesselring and the fact that he's upping some of his offensive instincts a little bit. I think Maveric Lamoureux realizes that in order to stay around, stay in the lineup, he has to be trusted by the coaches, avoid any major breakdowns, and then slowly build in some of that more offensive risk taking when the time is right. And I think that's the right approach, and he's done that. And you could see it in the results. He was called up. There's no guarantee he's going to get more than one game. Now he's 6 games in, right? So, especially for a defenseman, I think you want to start from keeping it simple first, and then slowly build into that. And we know that he's got upside, but listen, he's got a long career ahead of him. There's no need to try to bite off more than you can chew in your first handful of games.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the younger players that are going to be a part of this core for a very long time. Dylan Guenther obviously got off to just a scorching start. I was talking to Andre the other day. It looks like he's maybe righted the ship a little bit, but what did you see after that hot start that maybe took Guenther off track for a little bit? What does he need to do to get back on track? What are the pieces of his game that you're seeing?
Not surprising for me to see a little bit of a slowdown for Dylan. So obviously expectations are high, and it's that, he signed that contract and all the goals coming out of the gate. But you know what? Like, this is a hard league. It's a hard league to score in. And in order to, you've got teams that are scouting you every night. You score a couple of goals and you show you have this lethal shot on the power play, and teams are going to take that away pretty quickly. And that's why it's so impressive when you see these perennial snipers, the Stamkoses, the Matthews, the Ovechkins of the world. They have learned to adapt and score in all sorts of different ways in all different environments, and that's something he has to learn. It's not going to again happen overnight, but part of it is just the power play continuing to evolve and adapt, and that will figuring out ways to make sure that he gets his looks. But it's a lot on him in terms of figuring out how to create opportunities for himself and score, tip in goals and rebound goals and ugly goals around the net. Austin Matthews' goals are not all these one-timers from the top of the circles, right? Like how many of these goals are in the crease and tip-ins and redirects and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's the evolution of a goal scorer, and he's a good student of the game. I talked to him the other day. He's talked about how much he watches some of these other players, Pasternak and these guys, and wants to absorb the things that they're doing.
It's funny, you talked about young goal scorers, and another one on this team, a kid got 20 goals last year, was Logan Cooley. And he finally is able to find the back of the net. He's got 2 goals on the year. But now you've seen him on a line with Clayton Keller and Dylan Guenther. Are you seeing more than just his goal scoring ability? What does this kid bring to the offense of the Utah Hockey Club?
Well, I mean, he's been one of the more impressive young players for me this season, and it starts with his commitment defensively. And if you talk to his teammates, they say it's night and day from where he was last year.
Hmm.
I mean, he had a back check the other day against Vegas. The team's down 3-2, and he storms back, showcases his speed at the last second, reaches out and blocks a pass that would have given Vegas a breakaway to extend their lead, and they end up tying the game and getting a point. That, to me, that point belongs to Logan Cooley. So the commitment defensively for a young player, because the thing that I learned when it comes to this kind of thing, being a two-way player comes down to wanting to be a two-way player, and most of these young skilled players, they these days they want to score their goals, and a lot of them, they're not really that concerned with the other side of the game. And he told me he had early in training camp that he wanted to be a two-way player, but I kind of wasn't believing it. But he's proved it. So that's been really encouraging, and he's starting to get on the board more now as well, getting more shifts with Keller and some others. So I would expect his development only to continue to grow.
On that note, we got used to seeing Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz play together, run that high cycle for a couple seasons. What are the benefits of separating Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz?
Well, the benefits are pretty simple in my mind. They're both pass first players. So a lot of times they might get into this situation where, the passing looks great, but the puck never gets to the net. And particularly early in the season, that can be the case. So I think separating them puts a great playmaker on other lines where, maybe you match both of those pass first players with shoot first players. In theory, that makes a lot of sense. At the flip side of it is that they have tremendous chemistry. They've played together for a long time. Clayton Keller plays a very specific brand of hockey. He expects his line mates to kind of know what things he's looking for on the ice. Nick Schmaltz knows what he's looking for and can read and react off of them. They're great off the cycle together. But I think at least for a short time, it's been a good experiment to play them separately, and I think it's allowed more balanced production from other players as well.
I wanted to ask a question because you're the only one of the three of us that have played at this pace in this league. You've been in a lot of different teams. I'm very critical at times of team defending, whether it's Utah or other teams in the league. I can be critical on team defending. How hard is it? You've added Ian Cole, you've added Sergachev, you've all these new pieces on the back end, plus all of these new forwards haven't played in this system. Is it really difficult? Is it take time, especially for Sergachev, who's played same system, same coach, same system for a very long time, and they go, oh, shoot, I've got to switch gears. I've got to retrain my brain. What's that process like for a player?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a learning curve for getting up to speed with a new team and new systems. For example, on the penalty kill, right? Like the key on the penalty kill is that when one guy goes, everybody has to go. It can't be one player that jumps on you know, uh, you know, uh, Kyle Connor bobbles the puck, on the Jets power play, one guy goes. No, it has to be all four guys respond as a unit so that when Connor throws it away, when he gets pressure, the next guy is already on top of him. And I think it takes time a little bit to develop that chemistry. Um, there's definitely new faces, but I think it helps when there's experienced guys that have been there before, like Sergachev, like Ian Cole. They just know how to play. They know how to play in any system. They can figure it out. Um, but the league changes every year as well, and every night presents you with a different challenge. Some teams are fast in transition and can beat you off the rush. Some teams are strong and heavy off of the cycle and the forecheck, and you got to bear down low and win some of those battles. So you got to know what you're up against, I think, is the other element of being a good defensive team.
Dominic, want to ask you one more question before we let you get off to probably dinner plans in St. Louis, and you can tell Matty that we were throwing shade at him on this show. What has it been like to work with Andre Tourigny? And Pete is going to hate this question. Have you gotten a chance to try his homemade maple syrup yet?
Jeez.
So I didn't know this was a thing.
It's a thing. And it's good.
Homemade maple syrup.
He makes it. Yeah, his family makes it in Quebec, and it's like real cans, real labels. It's actually outstanding. But Craig has to talk about it all the time. It is a thing, and if you have the opportunity, sincerely make sure you try it.
I mean, when you go to Montreal, you better make sure that he gets some cans shipped down, because it's nearby. They can do that, and you got to try the syrup. But anyway,
oh my gosh, that sounds. I mean, that sounds incredible. I'd love that. Has he got a brand name for it? What's it called?
He won't even sell it. He said we're never going to sell
it. But he does,
it.
Craig. I forgot. It does have a brand name on it, but they don't sell it in stores. They just give it away to family, friends, and stuff. But it's real cans with they got labels. It's the real deal, and it's if you like really sweet stuff, it's the best syrup I've ever had. So,
Matt McConnell, who loves a good pun, will appreciate. Maybe we could call it surreptitiously.
So you're too smart for this business, Dominic. You're too smart. Gosh.
But you know what? He's been great. He's been very impressive. I think this day and age, like it's such a hard job to be a coach, right? You got to wear so many hats. You got to be smart tactically. You got to be a sports psychologist. You got to be able to scout the other teams and manage the bench and manage the media, and there's just so many things that the responsibilities that the coach has to have. I mean, I'm so impressed with Andre. The balance that he strikes too between keeping a high standard and holding players accountable, but also showing that he cares about them as people and understands that every player is different, in terms of what they respond to and how they need to be spoken to and things like that. I think he's really tuned into that. He's a real student of the game and a student of coaching. So he's been impressive. I think a great leader for the group for where they are right now.
Dominic, can't thank you enough for joining us. Go ahead, Petey.
We know we did so good, Craig. Like we really did so good at making sure everybody got their touches, and then we step on each other to get out in front of a professional broadcaster, Craig. That's embarrassing.
That was rough.
Yeah.
I'll go back to writing.
Well, we're just all in a hurry to go get some maple syrup. That's why.
Yeah. Well, you want to go get dinner. Make sure you bring your wallet because Maddie will probably forget his in the room. But that's an aside. About Matt McCaw. Thanks again, Dominic Moore, for joining us and bring us a little bit boots on the ground coverage and inside this Utah Hockey Club. Thanks. And hopefully we can get you back on again real soon.
Thank you, guys. Great to join you.
Take care.
Well, Craig, we'll be back with more on the Utah Hockey Club and news from around the hockey world right after this break. FOCO is the leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise with a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and so much more. They have the best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms, whether it's hoodies, jackets, beachwear, flip-flops, or even Craig's favorites, overalls. Just like Craig, FOCO puts the fun in sports. See what I did there, Craig? You put the fun in sports. There's something for fans of almost every occasion. Get all your Utah Jazz and Utah Utes collectibles and merchandise. And I've said it before, and I will say it again. The first official Utah Hockey Club merchandise is now available on FOCO. You can pre-order the Dylan Guenther's first goal in franchise history bobblehead. FOCO, they always have our back for sports. And they can have yours too. Get the best gear around by visiting foco.com and using the code ALLCITY10 for all non-presale items. Use the promo code ALLCITY10 for 10% off. Then stop over at Rugged Road because they're dedicated to creating a durable outdoor gear for adventurers who demand the best. Whether you're on land or water, Rugged Road gear is built to accompany you on every adventure. Rugged Road coolers are designed to always float upright so you never lose a drink. Rugged Road coolers are incredibly light, making them easy to transport on any trip. The coolers are guaranteed to keep their contents cool for up to 7 days. I get you just leave it outside in Winnipeg too, Craig, because that would probably do the same thing. Great for everything from fishing and tubing to camping and tailgating. These coolers are designed to meet the needs of every outdoor and sports enthusiast. So gear up for your next adventure with Rugged Road coolers, reliable, durable, and built to be used. Rugged Road is your ultimate outdoor companion. Head to ruggedroadoutdoors.com and use AllCity for 10% off. Craig, great having Dominic Moore on. Great. Boots on the ground. I wonder, though, as you travel around with the team, how nice it must not have to get on the ice for practice in the morning. Like, I go to the games, not have, like, for me, like, that would be, like, that'd be fantastic. Let's travel around nice hotels, buddy.
That was my experience. That was my experience always.
Oh, yeah. What am I saying? That's right. Yeah, that's what you did for all those years.
Pretend to watch practice, occasionally tweet the lines. Otherwise,
Didn't get yelled at
from broadcasters and
rarely got yelled at. You probably did get yelled at by Rich or somebody at some point in your time.
I got yelled at a few times, but
Craig,
it was pretty good life. It was a pretty good life, Petey.
This Utah Hockey Club had a tough one last night in Winnipeg, losing 3-0. They got the empty net goal to make it 3-0. I thought they played very well. I thought Vejmelka was good, stopping 25 of 27. Unfortunately, this is the third time they've been shut out, and they're having a real difficult time in finding offense. And I know that, it's hard. They don't have the players that can break through that to get to the inside, and we see it when Hayton gets there, or McBain gets there, or Bukestad gets there. They have a better opportunity. So, any thoughts on the offensive woes of this club right now?
I think teams are going to go through these periods of time. I'm not sure they want to be shut out, but in the case of that game in particular, I mean, Petey, Winnipeg is they're on fire right now.
They're good.
Yeah, they've lost one game all season. They are. I expected them to be good. I expected them to be a playoff team. I didn't expect them to be lighting it up like this. I mean, I think if you talked to Andre, he was fairly happy with the effort last night. They just had some. They had some opportunities. They didn't finish. I think they created a little bit better than maybe they did against Vegas, where we saw them get outshot badly. But more than anything else, I guess I would say, this is part of the process. And again, when you're missing those two defensemen that can help jumpstart your offense, right, with breakout passes, with what they do on the offensive side of the puck, we're going to have some struggles like this. It just is what it is right now.
Yeah, and I think I want to encourage Utah hockey fans. Like this, they gave up one 5-on-5 goal against one of, if not the best team in the NHL right now. And I think their penalty, we talked about this team taking too many penalties all season long, and they've killed penalties very well this year for taking the amount of penalties that they have. Unfortunately, they gave up one last night against Winnipeg. But it's kind of the same thing we've said about this franchise going all the way back to Arizona, is their inability to take shots at certain times. And I think it's kind of bleeding over again to this year. I think Michelli's doing a better job. He had a lot of shot attempts last night. I think Guenther did, and Keller did, but I think as a group, they're struggling to get shots through. They're getting too many shots blocked, and they're missing opportunities looking for the next play. Dom said, Keller and Schmaltz are pass first. And I think at some point, especially right now when they're struggling for offenses, they start all of the guys, and they start thinking pass first. But let's switch gears. This team was in Winnipeg last night, so we got to see it firsthand. Attendance woes in Canada. Is that really attendance woes in Canada? Is there a need to be concerned, Craig, about attendance in Winnipeg?
Well, I think you have to be concerned when your chairman, Mark Shipman, is talking about how it can't last. They want to get their season ticket base back up to 13,000. It's dipped into 4 digits. And then you're looking at crowds like 12,000 in the building. That's not going to cut it. Commissioner Gary Bettman said it's not going to work very well if those sorts of crowds are in Winnipeg. Now, nobody's uttering the R word yet, but there are some warning signs here. And look, if you talk to people up there that are around that team, they'll tell you, listen, the game day experience hasn't necessarily been the best. They haven't necessarily taken care of the fans the best. And I think they've tried to make a greater effort in the past 6 months. So it's not going to solve everything, right? With this short period of time. Oh, suddenly everything's okay. So I think that can be part of it, but listen, there are probably other buildings, right? Other experiences that aren't that great in bigger markets where they can still fill the place up. The bottom line here is Winnipeg's a very small market. It's a very small market. And you can say, well, it's in Canada, so that shouldn't even matter because literally everybody in the town probably wants to go to a game. Well, it's not panning out that way, in spite of the fact that this team is leading the National Hockey League. They are the top team in the league now, and they're still not drawing. That is a concern.
And that's one of the things you can go to Utah for a perfect example. They're the shiny new toy right now. And I tell you what, the ownership group at SEG has made this an experience inside the building and out. I think the city has embraced this team. The excitement of hockey is all over the Salt Lake City metro area. And I think that's really helped this team. And the importance for this ownership group, coaching group, players, anybody involved in this team is to make sure you keep that momentum going. And the way to do that, you start winning and start making the playoffs. Don't have to do it yet. Everybody understands the process. I got to give that right now. What a great message that Bill Armstrong's been able to pass on to this fan base, that they understand we're not changing our path on this rebuild for instant success. And I think that that's something the fan base needs to be aware of. They want to have a team in the playoffs every single year. And you're seeing those little strides. It's coming. I'm telling you, it's coming.
Yeah, listen, I had a couple people point out when I wrote this in a notebook that I put out recently that, well, hey, Utah's the one team below them in attendance. Well, in case you haven't noticed, they're playing in an arena that needs renovations, and they already have those renovations planned. Yeah. I'm not judging anything with Utah in the situation until that arena is finished. We've said it a million times on this show. They were not given enough time to plan for this. Let's see what things look like in 2 years when the Delta Center is ready, all their facilities are ready, everything is up and running. They've got a built-in excuse right now. Winnipeg, especially as a Canadian market, it does not.
Well, something else that's coming to Salt Lake City is the Olympics. Huh. And the International Ice Hockey Federation is preparing a proposal to add 3-on-3 hockey to the Winter Olympics as soon as 2030. Craig,
where's that? Where are they playing that?
In the French Alps.
Oh, I got to go then.
Maybe you can go cover it in the French Alps. By the way, for you, those of you who are just learning, the two of us, Craig is very bougie. We call him Bougie Craig for a reason. He went to prep school and he's been abroad several times. Yeah. So French Alps. If someone's going to cover 3-on-3 hockey in the French Alps, it's Craig. Craig, initial thoughts, because I have some, on 3-on-3 hockey in the Olympics.
Look, the NBA started this, right? In the Summer Olympics, there's 3-on-3 basketball. I'm not sure I'm on board with this, PD. Here's what I would say is, okay, where is this happening? Where are they playing the 3-on-3 leagues around the world right now? Is this an actual sport? And I know we've got a proposed league of 3-on-3 hockey in North America, but it's not a game. It doesn't currently exist. So why are we inventing something just for the Olympics? As much as I love watching 3-on-3 hockey because it's insane, why are we doing this?
Craig, yeah. The other thing we talked about, Craig, is bougie. I'm an old man that yells at clouds. So if we're going to play 3-on-3, then let's go farther. So then after that, we're going to have another one where we play shootout, which is just one on the goalie. We'll do that. That'll be an Olympic sport. Then we're going to make the fastest skater in hockey equipment. That'll be an Olympic sport. And then we'll make fighting on ice in hockey gear an Olympic sport. Let's just take every tiny little element of the game of hockey and let's make it an Olympic sport. I don't get the 3-on-3 basketball. I don't get it. If you're good at 3-on-3, play 5-on-5. Like play the actual game of basketball. Yes. I don't get it. I'm sorry I don't get it. Yeah, 3-on-3 in the Olympics doesn't belong. That's me. So 3-on-3 hockey does not belong in the Olympics. Who's going to play? Like, are the guys that are on your actual Olympic team going to go, okay, we got a game tomorrow against Canada at 8, and then I got a 3-on-3 game against Germany tomorrow at 11. Like, no, you'll get guys that don't make the Olympic team playing on the 3-on-3 team. It makes absolutely no sense. So no, it doesn't. No.
You know what this reminds me of too? This is on the continuum. Like we saw breaking or breakdancing in the last Olympics. What are we doing here?
Well, I was training for the next one. Is that out?
I took some grief for people for saying this has no place in the Olympics. Is breakdancing a sport, first of all? No, it's performing art is what it is. So if we're going to have breakdancing, how come there's not ballet in the Olympics? How come there's not every other form of dance? Why don't we have Olympic waltzing while we're at it, to stick with our generation, right?
Laugh.
What are we doing here? Why are we inventing things to add to the Olympics? There's plenty of sports out there already
that exist.
Let's just stick with those. Yes.
How about softball? Yes. Softball is not in the Olympics. Was baseball no longer in the Olympics? I don't think it is anymore. Somebody in the chat hopefully knows, but I don't think that. Yeah, let's get over it. Like I love the Olympics. One of my favorite times of year. And Olympic hockey, best on best Olympic hockey to me is elite. And I hope the NHL continues to allow their players to play. I know with the Four Nations Cup coming up in February, I'm really excited to see that. Curious to see if any Utah Hockey Club members are in any of the Four Nations Cup. I know Craig will be diving deeper in that as the season wears on. It's a little too early to get into that, but it's not too early for Craig to write about and talk about what's going on with the minor league players and what's happening down on the farm on the players that are developing for this team.
Yeah, I've got one story is already up. As you probably remember, I wrote a notes column called The Neutral Zone for a long time, and I've transferred that over to Utah. And it's just, like I said, it's a collection of notes, looking at some things that I looked at the start, talked to Andre Tourigny, Bill Armstrong, but I also looked at a couple of players in particular. Michael Carcone has played 3 games, I believe. I believe it's at 3 games right now that he's been in the lineup. And a lot of people are wondering, okay, are they trying to trade him? And I want to be very careful with the characterization of that, because I've seen reports out there saying, yeah, they're shopping him. They're actively looking to trade him. It's not true. That's not what's happening here. Now, would Michael Carcone like to find a home where he can play more regularly? Of course. Like, you know this, P. Like how many third and fourth line players would like a bigger role somewhere else if they could get it? Sure. Like if you granted all those requests, you'd be shuffling the deck constantly. I think that the Utah Hockey Club and general manager Bill Armstrong are listening to offers for Michael Carcone, but here's the problem. He's a 20-goal scorer. He's not in the lineup. You're not going to get requisite value for him. And as we've already seen with this team on the back end, you're going to have injuries at some point. He's a really good depth piece to be able to slide in if you lose a guy in the lineup. So no, they're not shopping him. Yes, they would listen to offers. I don't think they're going to get the requisite offer. And I don't know that they're that keen on moving on from him when they'd like to have that piece to be able to slide in. They're going to need him. We know this. At some point, there are going to be injuries up front where they're going to need a guy like Michael Carcone. He's a very valuable piece. So we'll see how this plays out. If someone blows them away with an offer, he might be moving on and he might find a better situation. But I don't know that that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, it's funny when you talk about this team. We've talked about the way this roster was built when they finally sent Kailer Yamamoto down to the minors, and honestly, they have an issue down there in Tucson getting him into the lineup because they're only allowed so many veteran players per night in their lineup, so he's not getting the developing and playing time that he needs down in the minors.
Yeah, and that's a tough situation. I'm not even sure. I understand it's a developmental league, but there should be a little bit of tweaking there. He had played in one game. He got one game in Abbotsford. And I talked to Steve Potvin, the Tucson Roadrunners coach, about that and how he really doesn't want to get into a situation where they're just rotating guys in and out, because first of all, he wants continuity with the lines. You want flow with your lines. But secondly, like he made the point to me that if you know, okay, I'm in this game, out the next one, it's almost like punching the clock. You don't have the same sort of buy-in. It's not as important. So he doesn't want to get into that situation. But he also understands how incredibly frustrating this probably is for Kailer Yamamoto to not be in the lineup after signing a contract with the Utah Hockey Club, thinking he was going to be in the NHL. And now he can't even get on the ice in the AHL. It's a tough situation. And I think you can probably speak more to this as a coach. There's a mindset when you go down to the AHL and you think you belong in the NHL. It's tough to get past that and recommit and, engage with your actual teammates down there, play the kind of game that you have to play. You have to embrace that experience. And I think sometimes it can be tough for players who are so used to playing up top.
And especially players that have played a significant role, and he did in Seattle a year ago, and he expected to play what he contributed to this team in the preseason games. That I think that's where he still is. Now you look at another player who I think is probably one of the guys that's next up. Maybe he isn't. I like to push for him to be next up on the back end. Is Kevin Connaughton. He's a guy that's played a lot of NHL games. He was an everyday NHL player for a very long time, but he's adjusted his role. He's had time to accept playing down in the American League. And I think that's the difference when you've reached that barrier and you go, okay, I get it now. This is where I'm at. I'm going to help develop younger players and I'm going to keep playing the game I love and get paid to play. And I don't think Kailer Yamamoto's there, but that goes back, Craig, to what this roster is built like. And you've got 13 forwards on the team and you go, oh, okay, well, you're sitting out one guy a night, but you're not. Andre Tierney plays 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. And so when you play that way, instead of sitting out one forward, you're sitting out 2. And on the back end, you have 8 defensemen here, but instead of sitting out 2 defensemen, you're sitting out 1. So I do think the 11-7 mix, there's a couple forwards out every single night. So I'm curious to see how long that lasts too, where we're seeing that 11-7 matchup.
Yeah, and I talked to Andre about this as well, and I hope people will go and read my story instead of giving everything away here. But one of the things he's trying to do, he's trying to manage minutes for guys, right? For Ian Cole, for Michael Kesselring, for Juuso Välimäki. You want to make sure that you're maximizing those players' potential by not putting them out on the ice, first of all, for too many minutes or in situations you don't want them in. So having 7 defensemen in the lineup allows you to manage those minutes better. He really likes that. And I don't know that that's going away anytime soon because that is the focus. But like you said, it does leave forwards out in the cold. Listen, Liam O'Brien, a lot of people think, oh, Carcone's playing, he's not getting in because Liam O'Brien's in the lineup. No, Liam O'Brien played 3 games as well. He's sitting out. And I think O'Brien's the type of player who understands that role more so than Michael Carcone. But it's still tough on you when you're out of the lineup that much, both to stay in it emotionally and then to be sharp when you get in, when you're not getting those sorts of reps.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. Like Liam O'Brien brings energy for this club, a physical presence. There are going to be games you can look at the schedule and go, okay, well, Liam O'Brien's probably going to get in the lineup here. And I don't know if that's where Michael Carcone is. Michael Carcone's a 20-goal scorer in this league, and where does he fit? And that's always been the problem with him here. Even when he was playing in Arizona a year ago, it's finding that fit for him. He's the guy that was getting 15, 16 goals in the league, and he was still out of the lineup because that doesn't fit. And it's a really hard thing. I like both those players. I think they bring different elements at different times. And when you're playing only 11 forwards, man, there's only so much ice time to go around. So I think it's going to be something interesting to follow as they continue in this road trip. And as you've already mentioned, as injuries come up, because we know that's definitely going to be something that's going to arise in the future.
Yeah.
Craig?
One more thing I wanted to talk about, because the first prospect report that I put out was really more about where is everybody playing. I like to give people a sense of where all the prospects are playing because they scatter to the winds, right? All over the globe once training camp ends. So you want to be able to track them, whether they're in the Canadian junior leagues, whether they're in NCAA hockey, whether they're over in Europe or if they're in the AHL. But I have another prospect report coming, I think tomorrow or early Friday. No promises.
Why not?
Yet.
What do you mean you don't know? Buddy, let's go. Skip dinner. Don't sleep. Get that prospect report. By the way, Craig, if you want to keep up on the future, because it's great that people are fans now of this Utah Hockey Club, but if you want to know the future, you got to know the players are going to be here in the future. And the best place to do that is through Craig's prospect report. And I will give Craig, I'll tip of the hat, as Craig uses the umlauts and characters and all the little dots and lines and things over every single letter that he's supposed to. And that's why he's a writer and I'm not. And he has to do that for our prospect report.
Yeah, and none in this one, fortunately, because I'm not looking at any European players in this.
Oh, there aren't? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I might mention them, and I do have a note section at the bottom, just quick hitters on some of the guys. But
I know how you do it.
Jonathan Castagna at Cornell. I'm talking about Wills Kahan at Boston College. And then I did a deeper dive. I'm doing a deeper dive. As I mentioned, it's not completely written yet. But looking at Josh Doan's situation, and you can obviously weigh in on this one as well. Josh back down in Tucson. He's not going to be happy about it. You don't want him to be happy about it, right? Oh, okay, cool. I'll just go play in the AHL. Josh showed quite a bit last season in his cameo and still, I think, showed quite a bit this season, even though the production wasn't there. But Andre Turin, you talked about maybe his confidence not being as high with the puck. He isn't producing, so they want him to go down, play in those sorts of minutes in all situations, get his confidence back, get the offense going. So I'm going to dive into that a little bit, but the core of this story to me really is when you look at the support system that Josh Doan has, I can't imagine a better one. First of all, he's got Pops to lean on, who is, as solid gold a human being as we know and has all the NHL experience and actually went through this same experience when he was with the Coyotes, like early on in his career. He got sent back to the AHL. But aside from that, Josh is going back to a coach who has coached him since he was like 2 feet tall, Steve Potvin. They have an unbelievable relationship. It goes beyond coach-player. They're friends. So in terms of an incubator where you want your prospect to develop, I can't even imagine a better spot than Josh Doan's in right now in Tucson.
Yeah, and here's a couple things. How is he doing down there? Well, in the second game in Abbotsford, he got 2 goals, and he rang one off the pipe with the empty netter to just miss a hat trick. He's got a week of practice under his belt now. They're going to have a couple of games against San Diego, a team lower than them in the standings. They got them at home. I would look for Josh Doan to pick up right where he left off. He's that kind of kid. He works really hard. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him put up some big numbers, get that confidence back, and see him at some point back in this Utah Hockey Club lineup. Speaking of the Utah Hockey Club, and we talked to Dom Moore going from Winnipeg to St. Louis. They started off this trip in Vegas. Like, that's a natural road trip, right? Vegas to Winnipeg to St. Louis. The National Hockey League is just, what in the heck are they doing? That is Vegas to Winnipeg to St. Louis. That's terrible.
I don't think all teams face this. I really don't.
That's terrible travel. So let's go to our producer, Emma, and see what the graphic looks like for the week ahead for this Utah Hockey Club. And you can see right now they've got the St. Louis Blues coming up on Thursday. St. Louis, they're better than expected this season. I think this is a tough game. If Bennington is sharp, that's going to be a tough game. But Clayton Keller in St. Louis plays very well. So look for Clayton Keller to be get his offensive mojo back in that game on Thursday. Then they go into Saturday into Nashville, and I have Nashville as one of the top teams in the Central Division. I'm just waiting for them. Well, when are they going to wake up? Hopefully, it's after Saturday.
What do you see there, by the way, with Nashville?
Honestly,
what's going on?
They're third in the NHL in shots on goal, Craig, and they're 29th in their offense. So they're not getting the opportunities to go in right now. They're a team that's used to play Nashville-style hockey is hard, digging pucks out of the corners. I think with the addition of Stamkos and Marchessault, they're playing a little too soft. They're trying to play a little too, hey, we're really good now, and they forgot their identity of who they are. If they can get that back, the Predator identity back, I'm still looking for this team to climb up in those standings. I still think this is a really, really good hockey team that's underperforming right now.
Yeah, and then you looked at the end of it, and they got to go. They got tough Bill Armstrong talked about this, November and December. It's really going to test this team's mettle. It's going to, as he said, make or break them because they have a really high quality of opponents. These 2 months will really have a good sense by the end of the year. And by the way, since Belle Frazier, our
pseudo,
sometimes our co-host, right? But the Salt Lake Tribune's beat writer for this team, I got to throw a little shade at Belle because of the trips that she chose to make on this road trip. The one that she skipped was Nashville. I mean, just thinking about this myself, Winnipeg might have been on the chopping block first for me.
Yeah. Okay. So, again, for people that are new to hockey, Craig and I both traveled. I was on the coaching staff of the Arizona Coyotes for 20 years. Craig has traveled in every single sport as a beat writer for literally everything. He was in Miami recently in the NFL. So he's been to all of these cities. If you are going to skip a city, Nashville is not one of them. Like Nashville is one of those, when we used to get the schedule, that would be one of the first ones we circled and go, oh my goodness, when are we going to Nashville? Like, it's fantastic. It's a great city. Everything's walkable. You can get to the arena walking distance, great dinners, all of those things. Winnipeg, no offense to Winnipeg. Well, a little offense. It's really, 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 really cold. It's cold in Winnipeg. Luckily, they went there this time of year and they avoided some of that. So I'm curious to see as this season goes on, Craig, as teams continue to travel in to Salt Lake City and visit the mountains and the beautiful, they're going to get some snow. And I'm just curious to see what other NHL teams are going to say and players about their experience and where they're going to rank Salt Lake City ultimately on their list of destinations. If they could bring their skis, which they can't, it would be right near the top of the list.
Park City.
Have you been to Park City? I honestly, I haven't. I haven't. I've been to Salt Lake.
Park City,
but so we'll see. We'll see how this ranks. If they could make it a ski weekend, I think it would be tops in the National Hockey League. So we'll have to wait and see. I'll be if you want to see what I thought of the Winnipeg Jet game last night, some of the good, the bad, and the ugly, make sure you check out the All Utah Hockey YouTube channel. Subscribe there, please, because we throw out all kinds of video content, all kinds of stuff going on. And make sure you check out and read Craig's content at the All City, not the. I said the word the. It's the because it's All City Network, but the website is allcitynetwork.com to check out all of Craig's article. And like he said, the prospect report's coming. If you want to know the future, learn it now by reading Craig's articles and keep up with everything going on in Utah. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at @all_Utah Hockey. Follow Craig at Craig S. Morgan. Follow me at S. Peters Hockey. Craig, any final thoughts before we kick this one off today and head out and wait for this team to play tomorrow night in St. Louis?
Just want to see if this team can right the ship a little bit. I've seen a lot of good things, and I know, Dom said it himself. Losing those two defensemen is really, really impacting this lineup, and there's not much you can do about it. You can't replace those guys. They're not going to go out and make a trade for that caliber of player because that just gets you off track with what you're trying to do for your future with all those prospects coming up. But I want to see if they can stabilize a little bit. As you know, I also wrote a story on Olli Määttä, as he pronounced it, by the way. That's the proper pronunciation. There's a pause, Määttä. You have to pause in between the two syllables. I made him pronounce it in the Finnish tongue. So.
Before we leave, Craig, and we're up against it here. Olli. I've been Olli. Yeah, see, I've been criticized because at one point I had in my notes Olli, A-H, and now somebody yelled at me in a different show in a different setting. So now we're going Olli. So that's what we're all in agreement. Olli Määttä.
Määttä.
So that's Määttä. Yeah. A little bit of a pause there. So
just,
I'll work on it. Craig is also our writer. He's also our pronunciation guru. So all things pronunciation go through Craig too. So if you've got a question to ask, because what Craig does is he actually does something strange. He actually goes to the people whose names they are, and he asks them, how do you say your name? And there's a rumor. I'm going to break it out here. There is rumor that we might start adding another show to the All Utah Hockey Podcast. So before you leave today, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel at All Utah Hockey, because you don't want to miss a show, and it might be coming out sooner than you think. So make sure you stay tuned to the All Utah Hockey channel on YouTube. Subscribe. Don't miss any of our content. Craig, thanks again. Thanks to Dominic Moore for jumping in and following this team across their road trip through the Midwest. That's Craig. I'm Petey. Thanks again. We'll see you next time, and until then, we'll see you at the rink.
We all silly like the mayor.